Hello everyone, my name is Val. I'm the founder and CEO of ExecWeb, and I'm also obviously the creator of this channel, The Brutal Truth About Entrepreneurship. I'm very passionate about helping entrepreneurs self-fund their companies, and that's why I'm doing these videos. So today actually I'm gonna talk about the 5 business variables that define a company. So I hope you find this video very useful and insightful. It's the preset and the stepping stone to what we're going to discuss later on when it comes to actually building a business. But before we do that, I want to share the 5 business variables that every entrepreneur should consider before launching a company. And the way I define them is by several variables, the NTPMA variables. The first one is the N, which is the niche or the ideal client profile. It's extremely important for anybody who plans to start a company to have a very crystal clear understanding and picture of who you're targeting, especially when it comes to B2B enterprise sales and enterprise companies, because if you're gonna start a self-funding company, you have to go into B2B sales. Anything B2C is very difficult, as I mentioned in my previous video, and close to impossible to self-fund for many reasons, which I actually highlighted in my previous video. So watch that if you want to hear more about the reason why you should always start a B2B versus a B2C company as a self-funded entrepreneur. But let's define what is an ideal client profile and a niche. That's a specific group of people who have a specific problem with a specific need. In the B2B enterprise vertical, for example, those ideal client profiles need to be defined geographically, by industries, then by number of employees of their companies, also obviously revenues generated by these companies if it's available, and then you have to look deep inside the actual company and see which job titles are you actually targeting, because you cannot go after the CFO, the CMO, the CEO, the CISO, right? They're all different players within the ecosystem that have very different needs, wants, and problems. The next variable is the T, the transformation or the claim. That essentially is the promise you make to your ideal client profile that you're going to deliver for them by offering them your product or service. The next variable is P, which stands obviously for price. That's what the price you're going to charge for your service and product to deliver the promise and the claim, the transformation you mentioned to your ideal client profile. So I hope you see how each variable builds on the previous one. And here I think it's a good point to mention a very simple but many times forgotten truth, that actually most startup founders, and by the way 95% plus of all startup founders fail, but almost 100% of all startup founders fail mainly because they do the right things, but they do them in the wrong order. Which is why I think it's critically important for me to share these variables and how they stack up on each other, and how the order of building them up and executing against those variables is critically important. And by the way, my first and second startup failed because of that reason. I actually did the right things, but I did them in the wrong order. So going back to price, the price is also the price that not only you want to charge, but you have to make sure that your ideal client profile is willing and able to pay. Then we move to M, which is the mechanism. Or the mechanism is basically how are you delivering your promise to your clients. In a typical SaaS business, that would be a web-based platform. In my case, because what I'm offering is actually a service-based business where I'm facilitating one-on-one virtual meetings between buyers and sellers essentially, our mechanism is simply Zoom, the video conferencing platform. And the last variable is A, stands for access channel or distribution channel. This is critically important because that's how the traffic and the conversion mechanism used to get the actual product or transformation claim to your ideal client profile or niche. So without distribution, you don't have business. You can have the most amazing product ever, but if you don't have a distribution channel that can reach significant number of your ideal client profile people, you will not have a business. Usually those tend to be web-based platforms, also social media. For B2C, Facebook obviously is the one choice that everybody gravitates towards. But for example, in B2B, where I'm focused on with all my startups, including the current one, ExecWeb, LinkedIn is absolutely the initial source that you have to tap into to test and validate your initial hypothesis. And let's face it, a startup is nothing more than a bunch of hypotheses that need to get validated, especially at the early stage. When you start a business, you don't really have a business. You just have essentially a plan and a bunch of hypotheses that you need to validate in the real world, so to speak. And we can talk about that, how you validate them with minimal risk of losing your two most valuable assets, which are your time and your resources and money, of course. So just to summarize, the 5 business variables that everybody should be concerned about and should think about before starting a company are the NTPMA. N stands for niche or ideal client profile, T stands for transformation or claim, P stands for price, obviously, M stands for mechanism, or how do you deliver that promise in transformation to your ideal client profile, and lastly, A stands for access channel or distribution channel. Once you have a product, once you have an ideal client profile defined, what is that distribution channel you're going to use to get to all these potential clients? I hope you found this useful and helpful, and if you did, please don't forget to gently click on the subscribe button so that you can subscribe and get my next video. And in the next video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the first business variable, the niche or ideal client profile, and discuss that in much more detail. Thank you very much, and I see you in the next video.